Panharmonicon presents a podcast.
Alright. So, welcome to the, well, I guess it depends on how you look at it. I don't know if we'll ever edit and release the first episode, what we did, a little introductory into us and the podcast, but this is Panharmonicon Studios presents a podcast. 3 peas in a pod. So, I guess a little background about the podcast. If this was your first time listening, we love movies. We love movies a lot. Like a lot. And one of the first things we want to dive into actually is sort of like a retro critique of Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. Starting off with Batman Begins, as you can imagine, it's the first one we're going to pop off here with, and I got some notes that we'll omit, so maybe the format will change, sort of how we approach critiquing the movies, sort of layer by layer, but we'll just kind of dive right into it. So, 2005. Do you remember seeing it for the first time?
I do remember seeing it for the first time.
How'd you feel?
I remember going in excited, mostly because it had been nearly a decade since we had a Batman movie, and just wondering if it was going to be anything like 90s ones. When I first saw the first trailer, I was pretty jazzed, you know. I don't know what it is about Nolan's filming, his videography, but especially in those movies, and I would also say things like Shutter Island. He was pretty good when it came to
Shutter Island? Did he do Shutter Island?
No, not Shutter Island. The other one,
Inception.
Inception.
Oh, okay.
Inception. How good he was with light and dark, and how good he was with warm light and cold light. Something that you didn't really see in any of the Schumacher movies, because it was just zip, doodah, close-ups,
Neons,
bright colors,
yeah,
all up in your face. I remember leaving thinking it was the best Batman movie I had seen. Probably as a kid, I probably thought it was the best one ever that was going to come out.
You've been what, 18?
I was
2005, right?
2005.
Yeah.
I'm a kid at 18.
Oh no, I'm just saying that's yeah. No,
I wasn't a little kid, but in 2005 I do remember thinking like that was kind of it.
Yeah.
It was also pretty cool to see, however you want to say, Ra's or Raish, and as one of the main characters, something that you didn't see at all, really. Even really so much in the 90s cartoons and such. Usually you would think that you would start out with a Joker or a Joker, Penguin, Mr. Freeze type thing. To start out with Raish and Scarecrow it was, I would say, pretty ballsy, given the time that it came out.
Okay.
Simply because it would be like doing a Superman reboot with, not Gorilla Grodd, but Solomon Grundy. as the main. You wouldn't expect that. You would think it would be somebody like a Zod or like a Luthor, and to give us not that, I thought worked pretty well, especially going forward with the next 2 movies, and where they were kind of going with how you kind of go from a year 1 Batman to I guess a more admittedly, they kind of go from a year 1 Batman to a grizzled vet far too quick, but essentially getting that continuous rise instead of just the Batman who knows everything and does everything immediately.
Yeah. I think that's a good point to bring up, because something that, so I was thinking about like superhero movies in general and sort of the start of the superhero boom, and I don't know. I guess I think it maybe depends on who you talk to of what they would classify as like the movie that was like the inciting point with a lot of that. Because I will admit, I mean, to be honest, like even back in the '90s, dude, I didn't even think of like Blade as a superhero movie. Like I just knew when I saw it, I was like, dude, I fucking love this movie. But I didn't even think at that time, and I may have even seen Spider-Man the Animated Series when Blade featured in Spider-Man the Animated Series, but didn't click that this is a Marvel movie. But something that I think is very interesting about that movie is that it doesn't do an origin story. It doesn't start off with Blade as a kid, like seeing his mom get bit, like, and it has its flashbacks, right? But it doesn't need to do an origin story for it to be a great film. And like I feel like you got
No, it's just I think with a character like Blade, you don't need to do an origin story, because I think the main appeal of Blade is he's like a part vampire hunter, right? You don't need to know how he became part vampire, though. Like knowing that it was his mother, that she was a vampire, she birthed him, and things like that. But I think like, and it's also something that hasn't been, and it's weird because it's something that hasn't been put out there consistently, right? The way that like Batman or Spider-Man or Superman has. Yeah. But it's also like I don't need it. And I don't think anybody else thought they needed it. Mm-hmm. And to your point, I even though I knew, like, oh yeah, Blade's a superhero. This is a Marvel movie. It didn't have that feel because it wasn't about Blade having superpowers or Blade being around superpowered people.
Right.
It was a vampire movie.
Yeah.
And considering in the 90s we had so many vampire movies, it was just another one added to the pile. Yeah. It just happened to be a bit different.
Well, it's also interesting as I think about it, because I guess Richard Donner's superhero movie. Richard Donner's Superman movie would have been like the first one. Would have been like an origin story movie, but like, and then I think about like flash forward. When did that movie come out? Was it mid '70s, early '70s? But then like you flash forward to late '80s when you get Tim Burton's Batman, and they didn't do an origin story. Like movie starts off, Batman's already Batman, and there's nods to how Batman got his start, but I think for most people who've read a comic, you know what Batman's story is. But it kind of made me think, like, dude, I think Batman Begins is like the first time that there was like a on-screen, physically represented like origin story for Batman. And I know now we talk about like, oh, we don't need to see Batman's origin story redone. Everyone knows it, which is totally fair. But it's amazing because I think if anything, like Spider-Man, we've gotten 2 origin stories, right? We got Tobey Maguire, we got Andrew Garfield. But we didn't really necessarily get that. Bless you.
Thank you.
That sneeze sounded like it felt good.
Sort of.
You ever get a sneeze that just feels like it cleanses your soul?
Not soul. But I have ones, especially like when like they back up and you keep thinking you're about to sneeze and you don't sneeze, and then finally it's like, yeah, I'm out. I'm here. Yeah. I'm like, oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you for that relief.
But because I think also about sorry, I'm going to go all over the place here, but I think about like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Like something I love about origin stories is that you do get to see this character who, especially for somebody who reads the comics or is at least familiar with comic stories, this larger than life character grow into like the myth or the legend that we know them as. And like with Spider-Man, you see him, this innocent, nerdy teenager who I think, especially like with us, like we can identify with, right? And you see him get his powers, and you see how that transforms his life, and how it gives him this confidence, and how he decides to tackle that responsibility of owning that power, and that it doesn't just start off of like, oh, he's a badass right off the bat. Like there's things that he has to learn along the way, which I thought is really cool, because you can see as the movies progress that there's different ways that he learns how to use his abilities. Like the second movie, he's doing now shooting web balls. Like he's able to do different things with his abilities. Batman Begins. Let me start here. So I think something interesting that you and I had talked about before, you had highlighted and brought to my notice that I hadn't thought about before, is the way that Thomas and Martha Wayne play. as characters and the mythos of his parents. Because I was rewatching Batman Begins, and I'm like, this ain't it. Because you know something I realized, which I think is really weird? I don't think Martha Wayne spoke once. I think she maybe yelled Thomas. She screamed like Thomas when he got shot. But there was the scene where they're on the public transportation and they're going to the opera. Mm-hmm. And the entire time, dude, Thomas Wayne is just talking. The city's been really good to our family. And then mom is just sitting there like she's just supposed to be arm candy. Like as if she has nothing to contribute to the conversation, which to me, I just kind of felt weird. Because it just kind of feels like it just diminishes her role in his life. And it was very much focused more on the relationship between Thomas Wayne and Bruce Wayne. And so, yeah, it was really weird to me that, like, I didn't really hear her voice until he got shot. And then that was it. Something else, and I've got some notes here. Oh, if we can remember to edit this part out. Let's put an asterisk as I'm reading here. I think overall the movie is a very fun and entertaining movie to watch, but of course, like any film, it's not perfect. It's not without its faults. And I know this is a conversation that we've had as well with, like, how do you approach the critique of this movie? And it's almost been 20 years since this movie came out, and since then we've had Ben Affleck as Batman, multiple, DC animated versions of Batman. Whether that be like the actual ones that were released by WB or even like the Saturday morning cartoons, like the Batman that came out, Robert Pattinson's the Batman, which I do love, but I can't help but to draw some comparisons to that. And again, like we had discussed, is that really a fair way to go? Because with the amount of not only Batman movies and Batman material, but just like superhero movies in general that have come out between 2005 and now, there's a lot more material out there for directors, producers, for them to be inspired by. For like new ideas for them to explore that might have, to a degree, been evolutions of ideas that maybe were introduced by Christopher Nolan. But then the question comes up is like, does it age well? And I think that's one of the things for me that looking at the relationship with like Thomas and Martha Wayne to Bruce Wayne there compared to what we saw in the Batman, it's like, man, this is really different. Because it lent so much more substance and I think like density to that relationship and to like their relationship to the city and what they meant to the city. Because something I noticed in Batman Begins is that anytime they talk about Thomas and Martha Wayne, there is no action behind it. It's just really like, this is what your parents meant to the city. Your parents did good things. Your parents were good. Your parents were good. Your parents were good. Your parents were good. But you don't see like them doing anything. There's no like them at a charity event. There's no like, I mean, there's conversations of them trying to instill certain values, I think, or I should say them, because obviously Martha Wayne just doesn't say shit like until she dies. But there's like, Thomas Wayne trying to instill certain morals. But something that gets me with that is like, I'm not a parent myself, but I think it's very important that when it comes to teaching your children, you can't just tell them, be this, because this is what I want you to be. Like, you also have to be that person in action. Like, you in motion, you have to represent the very, like, ethics and morals that you're trying to push down to your children. You can't just say that and expect them to follow along, and that's what it feels a lot like at Batman Begins that you see, is, hey, your parents were good. Okay, where's the vision of that? Am I supposed to just believe that they're good and billionaires that want to act like any other normal person because they took public transportation to an opera?
I think that would be because if you look at Batman and you look at the long history of Batman, Thomas and Martha factor greatly without ultimately being even really a big part of his life. Both of them are essentially supposed to be catalysts for why he becomes Batman.
Yeah.
Almost as if there isn't a Batman, like in a world where those two don't die, Bruce would never become Batman.
Yeah.
And there are like what ifs, or Elseworlds, I should say, in which that occurs to some degree, where instead of becoming Batman, he does something else. But it seems that with Batman Begins, and with probably every really like movie adaptation, with the exception of the Batman, that what you're looking at is a set of ideals. And I think with Nolan, what he was really going for, and I think you see it more so in The Dark Knight than you do in Begins, he's trying to say that Thomas and Martha are a set of ideals that Bruce Wayne should strive for. But Bruce Wayne has to battle the demon inside of him that made him want to be vengeful instead of charitable. And you see that like that kind of split where Bruce is playboy billionaire philanthropist, but Batman is this lone wolf, needs to right wrongs violently, has to get a revenge that he'll never be able to truly get. And that comes... It probably doesn't come off very well in Batman Begins because it's hard to, I think, without almost saying it. And what you kind of get is just this thing you get every single time, which is Martha and Tom die. Bruce is left. Bruce decides at some point in time in the future it'll never happen again. That works well in a world where you can continue showing that Batman and showing that that's something like that, like I said, that revenge he'll never be able to get. That this is like that ultimately Batman is as mentally messed up as the people that he stops. But there is an ego to him in which he still thinks because he's on the right side of things that as messed up as he may be, he can never be as messed up as they are.
The criminal element that he, yeah.
If you, and I'll say like they Nolan tried. Nolan, he didn't get it across in the first movie.
Yeah.
He didn't at all. He tried in the second movie by, instead of using Bruce, using Harvey to show that as good as you can be, you're always one misstep from like everything going bad.
Yeah.
And then in The Dark Knight Rises, he tried to make the everything go bad thing happen and try to prove that Batman and Bruce are above it all. Like that he can still rise above it.
I mean, you think that happened even somewhat in like The Dark Knight? Because I mean, here's the thing: like in The Dark Knight, you have Harvey Dent and Bruce Wayne / Batman, right? And both are vying for the affection of the same woman. Mm-hmm. And to your point about there being just like that one bad day, that one misstep, obviously they each take it differently.
They do, but I think the problem is, and that's not a problem, but I think the difference is that the misstep happens at the same time. And to be completely fair, Harvey's misstep happens because of Bruce. If Bruce doesn't immediately go to save Rachel and hope that the cops get to Harvey quicker, then Harvey doesn't lose Rachel to Batman. He loses Rachel to forces outside of his control. And he also doesn't get hurt or like have his body burned up. And these are all things that ultimately lead him down the path that you would think Batman would take, that Batman would have taken in the first movie, but Batman doesn't. So I guess you could maybe say like it showed that one took one road and one took the other road, but one wouldn't have had to take that road if it wasn't for Batman.
But Batman, they were... And are you factoring in the fact that... Because didn't Joker give them the wrong... He, like, intentionally mixed up the...
intentionally mix up things. But I guess what I'm also trying to say is, in this world, in the world of The Dark Knight, do you think Joker still happens without Batman being around?
Well, yes. Well...
I should say, do you think he would have centered in on... So, without Batman, and there was always going to be that criminal element regardless, I guess. But the question is, do you think Joker would have focused on the criminals still if he didn't have this vigilante with which he could turn his fixation onto alongside of Harvey Dent, who was trying to like clean things up? I think you probably would have still gotten the character of the Joker, but I don't know if you've gotten him to the extreme that he ends up at the end of.
That's fair, yeah. Because I guess one thing we don't know for sure is, because at the end of Batman Begins, you know, you have the conversation between Gordon and Batman. He hands him the card, and he's like, I'll look into it. Jumps off, flies away. You know, let's wait 3 years for the next movie. So it gives you some hint that obviously the Joker was already around, but at what point in this whole story did the Joker start? Like, was he already around doing stuff, like, before Bruce Wayne even made it back and revealed himself to Gotham City as like, hey, I'm still alive? Or did he start somewhat a little bit after, you know, he came around and it just wasn't something that Batman was focused on because there's other shit going on? But yeah, it's interesting to see the juxtaposition, or to, like, you know, to go back and watch these movies after having seen, like, the Batman, and seeing other portrayals of Bruce Wayne, you know, / Batman in these movies. But that's something that I'm like, okay, like, I think, again, like, to your point, it didn't maybe land as well as he'd hoped. And maybe I'm just being too critical. It's just one of those things where, I don't know, I guess it's more impactful for me when there are scenes that depict that sort of altruism that he's trying to convey to Bruce Wayne. When you see him doing that, and personally, if a billionaire taking a monorail to an opera is supposed to be Christopher Nolan's way of saying, hey, they want to be just like everyone else, that's not enough for me personally. Because beyond that, like, once they go to the opera, I mean, that's it. They leave the place, and then that they're dead. Something else that I noticed, and of course this is probably just more from, like, I don't know if this is a Christopher Nolan thing or this is just a WB thing, like, hey, we need to sell as many tickets as possible, so we just can't show or do certain things. But there's almost, and I made a note here and called it like the, what is it? It's like a sort of Broadway depiction of evil. It's like an on-stage, I don't want to say musical, but like a very thespian way of depicting. I'll get to that analogy later, all right? We'll work on this term for other episodes, but, like, basically, I've been listening to a lot of true crime podcasts, and something that seems very consistent is that the human body is very resilient, and it's there. Dude, I've been listening to stories where somebody's, like, shot in the head, and it's not even. They're still moving, like, they're still kicking.
It is odd how many people have been shot in the head but continue to function,
and, like, or need to be shot, like, several times before they finally go out. And I say this because when Joe Chill kills them, it's a single shot. Boom, boom. That's it. You don't see any blood. And it might sound bad, because maybe it sounds like somebody can listen to this and be like, is he advocating for more gruesome? It's like, no, like, Joe Chill, if Joe Chill is some, like, cracked out, desperate, just random thug, like, is he going to have the skills just to be able to off two human beings that quickly with just, like, a single shot?
Well, to be fair, his shot on... So I would say his shot on Thomas was probably lucky. Considering that Thomas didn't actually immediately die, he did talk to Bruce for, like, a hot second and then died.
Fair.
But with Martha, he probably was able to... Because he does shoot twice, right? He shoots Thomas, and then Martha screams...
Then he shoots her.
And then he shoots her.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, like,
so
a single bullet.
It could be possible that after, like, his maybe, like, I mean, also his name is Joe Chill, but like, maybe after the shot at Thomas, he becomes more composed, so that when he shoots Martha, he just knows where to shoot.
Well, so fair to bring it up, but later on, when we have a flashback and Bruce is contemplating, I'm going to kill Joe Chill after this parole hearing. And the woman comes up, hey, Joe Chill. Falcone sends his regards, shoots him once, kills Joe Chill. And then I'm watching the fight scene between, and this is our red herring moment with who's really Ra's al Ghul. And I forget the actor's name, brilliant actor, the guy who plays Ra's al Ghul at that point, or who we believe is Ra's al Ghul. When he was fighting the fight between him and Bruce Wayne, and when Bruce Wayne was training in the League of Shadows, there's a misstep, and then some debris falls on him, instant death. It's like everything comes so quickly, as if to say that, like, man, like, these humans look very fragile. And I don't think it's an intention to be like, hey, this is the fragility of man. So much as it's just like, are you afraid to show, like, what this violence would really be like?
It's probably just to get it out of the way as quick as possible. But this is also 2005. What are your other superhero movies? Things like Daredevil and Elektra and Spider-Man 3. So you aren't really looking at like a period of time where they're trying to be more realistic, even though they all claim it, and that's why like the X-Men didn't wear colored spandex; they wore black leather.
But Wolverine still had his Wolverine comic style hair.
Yeah, so they are all ultimately still very comic book, and therefore like trying to be like a thing that children can watch. But that isn't to say that you can't still show those things, like, somewhat. To me, I think he just didn't, because if you really notice, like, especially at the beginning of that movie, up until the point where the flashback happens, it's kind of like boom, boom, boom. Like, like, I was thinking to myself, I was like, did Christopher Nolan have some place he needed to be? Because he was just, like, going through, like, he was just like, here you go, flashback. And then, like, it was like, okay, slow down a little bit. Like, it was just like, I was like, okay.
Yeah, he had a coupon that was about to expire, bro.
Like,
he had to
calm down. It was like, shooting didn't have to happen in one day, bud. You can take it a little bit easier.
All right, guys, we got to get every shot done in 24 hours.
Gotta get this movie going. Go. But, like, I feel like some of those things were really just to, like, this is a scene, they die.
Yeah.
On to the next thing.
And maybe that's the case, but I guess my trouble ends up being is throughout the movie you have this constant reference to just like the depravity that is so palpable in Gotham City. And when I see things like that, to me it takes away from any feeling being immersed in that depravity. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know I said this earlier, but I'm finding it hard not to do this, but like looking at the Batman, the city of Gotham City felt to me like it had its own personality. Like, there's this really weird moment in the movie. So this is, again, they're in a flashback following Joe Chill just got killed by the person that Falcone sent. Bruce Wayne is in the car with Rachel. They're driving down the street and they're having this conversation about, just the injustice of Gotham City and how bad things are getting. And I even quoted this. Rachel Dahl says something to the effect, good people like your parents who will stand against justice, they're gone. And again, it's just like one of those references to his parents, so they're good people, like they'll stand against injustice. And it's like, when did you show me that? When did you show me really that they'll stand against injustice? Like, you didn't. But then she takes this left turn, and it's just this one left turn that she has to take. And maybe that's also like very on the nose for a reason. Like, hey, this took a left turn. She literally takes a left turn down this road and goes down into the Narrows, and it's like a completely different world. Automatically, just like at the drop of a hat. It's like they almost kind of like drive down a ramp, and it's just a completely different version of Gotham City. And it physically tries to represent a little bit more of that depravity. But if you're going to try to tell me that this place is getting worse and worse, and then you see things like that, even as a 16-year-old, I'm like, man, I think life is much worse than that. Like, and maybe it's a movie ticket thing. Maybe it's kids are gonna go see this, so I don't want to get too deep into it. But like,
do you remember where they did filming, like primary filming for?
I don't. I want to say like they always kind of used. I mean, typically with those movies, they do a combination of things, right? They may film like Chicago, or
because I know the third one was done in.
Was it Pittsburgh?
Was it Pittsburgh or Cleveland?
Yeah.
Part of me wonders if that's the problem, is that the filming location was not just a justifiable location for trying to show what a Gotham City, especially the Gotham City that they always try to promote as being like Gotham City, this dark, torn down, crime infested place where like the people are just trying to, get by day, but they always got to deal with the Maronis or Falcones and just random people trying to like steal from them day after day. So I think trying to also juxtapose that with like the glitz and glamour part of Gotham, the part that Bruce Wayne, the billionaire, lives in with the high rises and the parties and the Playboys girls and all that type of stuff, makes it very hard to make like this place has just never seen good days when you're just driving down the middle of like Toronto and you go, no, that looks like a perfectly fine city. I don't know what you're talking about. Whereas I think that the Batman, and to your like question of in which lens are you supposed to be able to look at this movie at, it's 2024. You should be looking at it from not from a lens of the 16-year-old that watched it in 2005, but as an adult who's watching it now, again, who has both experiences, but also has the experience of watching what could be considered better iterations of the Batman character be put out there on the big screen. Because you're right, Gotham in the Batman is a character unto itself because we see life happening in it. Yeah, it is like Bruce does so little inside the city itself, despite the fact that everybody else in the city does so much in it. Whether there's Catwoman doing her thing in like the Penguin, or even like the history of seeing Thomas and Martha do things for the city itself. All of these things make the city a character like it is in the comic books, where it's like, okay, there's a reason that Batman doesn't just like he does defend the city. Yeah. Like, because in reality, Batman should probably either be like some type of Avenger where he's just in every city that isn't his own, or is done with crime immediately and just like stops being Batman. Like, there's a reason he continuously defends like his city, because it is a city. It's not just a backdrop for action to take place the way that it kind of is in the Nolan trilogy. And I'm losing my train of thought. Okay. You got it, buddy. As and as such, you see a kind of like a deadening of the city in the Nolan trilogy, in which it doesn't matter what's happening or even which city is supposed to be representing Gotham City, because it doesn't go out of its way to truly try to make a bunch of different landmarks for you to be like, oh, yep, that's that. This is that. This is that. And as such, it just allows you to maybe just focus on Batman. But the problem becomes, we've now seen what you can do when you have both. And back then, we just didn't have that. Yeah. But he probably also wasn't thinking that he needed to give us that. He probably was just thinking, I need to give you a Batman experience that isn't Batman or Batman Forever. Yeah.
Yeah. Which you succeeded. I mean,
but to also be considered, while those aren't great movies and that they don't give you great representations of Batman the character and are vastly different in their depiction of Gotham each time, they are actually depictions of a city. Yeah. Very unique city. Like, even if there is a depiction of it that has like highways going through buildings. Yeah.
It looks like a Hot Wheels racetrack or some shit that you would put together in like 1995.
Like, I don't know why it would do that, but it had more character than the Gotham City of
and driving up trilogy. Statues and shit like through the mouth. Like, what kind of?
Very, very weird. Yeah. I don't know why, but it also hit that like I think Gothic. I think is the style that Gotham is supposed to have, and they hit that. And I would even say that to some degree, the Batman does that. It does it in a more like What if it was 2021 and everything kind of was more slummy type deal? But it takes that concept of like, if those old Schumacher Gothams became real and aged over time, that would be what they would kind of be. Sands like highways through buildings and statues able to like land on other statues to become ramps. Putting that aside, yeah, I would be like, yeah, that this like, because I mean, they all like it has such a like I feel like, and I don't want this to become a review of the Batman, but like I feel like in the Batman, I can be like, oh yeah, each place that they're going to makes sense. And it also feels like each of these places, even though I don't even know if they all were filmed in the same location, they all feel like they were filmed in the same city.
Yeah.
Like just a city was able to be transformed into Gotham. And they're like, here you go.
Yeah.
Do what you want to do with it.
And that's one of the amazing things is because that's the thing that I remember one of the first classes I took in film school is it kind of like really opened my eyes to the amount of energy and effort that's put into every single shot. Because like as a kid, like watching a movie, when you're watching a movie, that's an hour and a half to 2 hours, 2.5 hours of your life. But for that crew, that was months to years of their life planning all of that, every little bit. And so there was this exercise that I remember the professor doing of, he had someone from the class come up, and I forget, we were watching some John Wayne movie. We didn't watch the whole thing, but it was just like a clip. But he basically was like, hey, yell out shot every time you notice the shot changes. And it was interesting to us sitting in the class and realizing how many times myself, Matt, like, you know, because me, Matt, and Dan were in the same class. So we, it was interesting to kind of see people fail to highlight each individual shot change, because it's something that as a general audience member, you don't even really notice.
Yeah, like so I was about to ask, like, in this case, are we talking about a shot as being like a complete scene change, or are we talking like cuts?
Cuts. Yeah. Which is a different shot. Yeah, not necessarily like a completely different scene. Like, hey, we're in the mountains now. Now we're pivoting to some broken down Western village in like 1876. So that to me was eye opening, but it just kind of lends more sort of detail and background information on like how every shot that is composed took a long time set up. There's a lot of thought that goes into that, and so it just kind of makes me wonder when it comes down to it, because Batman Begins is 2 hours and 20 minutes, so it's not a short movie, and it's amazing to me that within that time there are certain things that they weren't able to convey as well in that movie, because the thing is, again, like when it comes to like bringing some sort of personalization of Gotham City. And when you keep talking about things are getting so bad in the city, things are getting so, like, that's reiterated so many times in this movie. And I'm like sitting here taking note of that, and I'm like, but I don't really see it. And the only time I really see it is like you just went to a different setting in a part of town. It's like if you were just shooting, you were shooting a superhero movie in Cincinnati, right? And you're like, man, the city's getting so bad. But like you're showing the city getting bad is the juxtaposition between having shots in Mount Adams, and then you pivot to let me go to like
West End or something like that.
Yeah, dude, like, you know,
Price Hill.
And it's like, is that all you feel the city getting bad is like just houses, people that just don't have as much money to keep up, or is it the criminal element? Like it almost again just kind of seems like, I guess in a nutshell, that the depiction of things getting bad is some folks just don't really have that much money. Like, you're not showing people getting mugged all the time. I mean, I guess there's the attempt on Rachel Dahl's life, but even that itself has a direct impact and correlation to the story of like what that story thread in the movie. But so much of it is just showing that, and like even to the point where there's a scene where like it tries to convey the seediness and the corrupt nature of a lot of the higher up like politicians and judges and cops by being like, and this is part of the flashback where after, again, Joe's parole hearing, he goes to that restaurant where Carmine Falcone is. And he approaches him like, I'm not afraid of you. And he pulls out the gun. He's like, you know, I could shoot you right here. There's a judge right there, a cop, politician, and they wouldn't bat an eye. And when you see Bruce Wayne, just even before he goes into the restaurant, he's walking up, and the establishing shot, it just seems, it's very dark. You can tell that they tried to set it up in a way that made it seem like you're going into a place that typically somebody like Bruce Wayne probably shouldn't be going to. But you go inside, and honestly, it kind of has the air of going to like Nicola's down the street or some high-end restaurant in the heart of Cincinnati. And you have all these people in this glitz and glam, dressed up, all this money that you can tell. The judge has these women around his arms and shit. And it's like they tried to convey the corrupt nature of that city by just saying, hey, these people don't belong here. That's it. Like, it doesn't necessarily seem like it goes beyond that. And so again, it kind of boils down to, like, for me, like, personally, when it comes to, it's not enough to just say these things. Like, this is a movie. It's a visual medium. Like, show me that. And don't do that by just being like, oh, that cop shouldn't be having a dinner at this bar where Carmine Falcone is. Like, and now, to be fair, there are certain moments where, like, you see the cops doing something that is actually seedy. I think, like, Rachel Dawes' boss does get killed by somebody. I don't know if it's a security officer or whatnot. But again, point being, it's like, how could you, like, looking back at it, you know, if you could do that over, would there be any changes to how Christopher Nolan would have depicted just how corrupt the city is? And I know you said it, like we've said it multiple times, but then I look at the Batman. And that corruption it feels like omnipresent, and the way they depict it there is a lot different. But yeah, it's something I noticed. Something else though. I guess moving past that really gets me, and I've mentioned this, and it's something honestly, like after I saw Batman Begins for the first time and I left, it's like I knew that I enjoyed the movie. But you ever see something and you can't quite put your finger on it, where you're like, something was missing, but I can't quite tell what it was. Something was off, but I couldn't quite tell you. And at that time, as a 16-year-old, I just wasn't sure what it was. But then, like, later on, I watched the movie more and more, and I watched it again, and I'm like, the action in the movie is very much focused on huge set pieces, loud explosion, very bombastic, sort of, I don't want to say necessarily like over the top to a degree, I guess in some ways can be, but that's like, I think like the nature of any like blockbuster movie, especially superhero movies, is going to be somewhat over the top. But the action in that movie is not all that great. And I say this because like when I watching the scene where Bruce Wayne for the first time introduces himself to the criminal element, there's a build up to it that I love it because it's so dark and you don't even know he's there. You just have Carmine Falcone, and I think his name is Flash, the detective that you know is a corrupt detective, and he's sitting in a limo with Carmine Falcone. And there's a scene where this random henchman by this open container just gets snatched into the darkness. And I love it for like what that means. So like Batman is the darkness. Batman hides in the shadow. And you didn't even know, like there wasn't even a scene where you saw Bruce Wayne suit up and be like, I'm gonna go down to the docks and stop Carmine Falcone. You just pivot there, and he's this presence. But they're so dark and there's shadows everywhere that you don't know what shadow he is in. And for that person to just get snatched out of nowhere, and then that caused that sort of panic attack for all these other people. And they don't have no idea what's going on because Batman is just, they don't know the concept of Batman. They don't know what the fuck this thing is. And one by one, he starts to snatch them up. And I love that. Because to me, like Batman, that's something that he is supposed to be able to use, almost kind of like his superpower, is being able to instill fear in people. Instill fear, especially into people that you wouldn't think otherwise feel it. Because they are the object of fear. They're the people who create it. They're not the people who are supposed to feel it. So that makes this great feeling of seeing, in a way, maybe our own sort of, I don't know, maybe what the word I'm looking for, like twisted sense of what justice looks like, being exacted onto these people. But then, they look up, he drops down in the middle of this group, and he's around like 10 dudes. And he beats up the 10 dudes. But it's so fast, it's so chaotic, it's so close up, that it's just this interpretation of like this spinning sort of Michael Bay camera around the action. You see a cape fly and a fist, presumably. Someone gets brought down to the ground. And then in that, you're interspersed with shots of Carmine Falcone and Flass in the car. And they're confused about what's going on. And then you cut back and the camera's still spinning. And there's still these shots. And there's still the punches. And there's still the kicks. And there's all this shit. And you can't see very clearly what's even happening. But the next thing that you know, everyone's down. Now, again, like, this is just personal opinion. If you're going to do it like that, I would have almost preferred that you not even have showed it that way. Just show them already down on the ground. But like if you want to show sort of the physicality of Batman, that to me didn't do a great job of bringing across the physicality of Batman. Because everything happened so quickly that I can't tell what's going on. You know, like, and then you look at other interpretations of Batman. And not to keep harping on Robert Pattinson, but we can go to Ben Affleck. And like, even though it's not really a great movie, Batman vs Superman, dude, that scene where Ben Affleck is going to get Martha Kent, and he's battling all those dudes. Like, imagine that scene being done the same way that you see Christopher Nolan do action sequences, where it's like one-on-one fight scenes, and it's just these very quick flashes and very close up to where you can't even. Is that a knee? Is that an elbow? Is that a fist? What is he throwing?
Yeah, I wouldn't have been a big fan of that, mostly because to me that was the only period of time where Ben Affleck felt like he was Batman, as opposed to just this dude who was angry and screaming the entire time. It really, like, it showed for the first time, I think, in an actual, like, Warner Brothers production of superheroes, what the one that does, like, hand-to-hand combat would look like if he took on, like, a group of dudes who don't know how to fight all that well and isn't taking on superheroes.
Yeah.
I would say that's probably just a lack of Nolan having a good grasp of what that type of action should look like, and also not having a good enough, like, fight coordinator to really help pull that off. Or maybe he did have a good enough fight coordinator, but just didn't believe in him enough. Because if you look at the first scene in, like, the prison, the same thing happens.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of, like, in fact, there's like a part of it where I think a dude, like, goes to kick him and you see him grab the leg, and then it's a cut, and in the midst of the cut you hear what should
like a bone
snapper crunching, like crunching, and then, like, the dude's just on the ground.
Yeah, and he's always like,
and you're just like, but like, what did he do to him to cause that? Like, understand that you're saying fill in the blank yourself, but then, like, if in the very next movie you're willing to show him, like, drop a dude from a building that he won't die from but land on his feet and show him, like, actually, like, mess up his legs.
Yeah.
You could have showed it in that scene, but maybe he realized he could get away with more when it came to The Dark Knight. And I honestly, that's what it feels like with The Dark Knight, is a person who's like, I got this first one out of the way. I know now what I can and what I can't do, and I'm going to turn that up to, like, 8. And then never turned it he never got to 10. But
well, it's funny you bring that up, because, like, as I think about, and of course, for all of you guys that are hungry for that second episode, girl, yeah. Actually, I think we talked about doing The Dark Knight third.
No, Dark Knight's still second.
So okay. Is, like, I'm trying to think, like, are there really even that many hand-to-hand combat fight scenes in The Dark Knight? Like, the one that I think comes up, the first thing that comes up is when there's a callback to the Scarecrow, and he's fighting them, and that's very quick before he gets this new suit. But then there's also when he's in, I think, Beijing, or when he goes to Asia to extradite the dude. Mm-hmm. To me, it felt like that was also, like, a very close, dark, kind of hard to tell what's going on scene. And then a lot of the other action set pieces are larger set pieces, like car chases and things of that nature.
Which is crazy to me, because you have Michael Jai White in this movie. And you don't use him.
You saying Michael Jai White knows how to fight?
I would say Michael Jai White of all people.
I know you know how to fight. Don't beat me up.
Like, if that'd be like if I made a Shang-Chi movie and it had Tony Jaa and Donnie Yen in it, and neither one of them fought whatsoever.
Yeah.
Both of them were just, like, they were like cloud gods or something like that, and they talked, and then they were like, "See ya." Yeah. You're like, I'm sorry, what? You'd be like, if I'm gonna put a well-known martial artist in my movie, best believe, even if he's like, I really just want to stretch my acting skills out, I'm like, you can stretch your acting skills out after you do this fight scene, because I'm getting you for a fight scene. There's no like, I'm not gonna be like, yeah, man, there are a plethora of men that could be in a suit, but I really think that Michael Jai White should be the man in this suit. No, he's going to be fighting. Even the CW got it right and made the man Bronze Tiger. They knew what was up. Who can fight. They knew what was up.
But that's the thing it's not only really that scene, with it, and you would think to yourself, okay, like maybe that's just because it's supposed to highlight the unknown. It goes into that fear of like the darkness and the fear of the unknown when it comes to Batman. But then like the movie progresses and there's more hand-to-hand fight scenes, and it's just the same thing. Like towards the end of the movie, when you have your climactic third act, and Bruce Wayne gets out of the house, gets suited up, he goes to confront Raish, and he's fighting some of the like lower level League of Assassin members. It's a lot of just close up, very fast. You hear the sound effects of the cape moving. A punch, maybe an elbow is thrown. I don't know. It's so close, I can't really fucking tell. That happens again. And then he takes him to the subway with Raish. And it's the same, very close up. You don't really get to see. I'm like, dude, like, pull the camera back a little bit. Let me see Batman go in. And I don't know if that was necessarily... And maybe things got slightly better in subsequent movies, and maybe that could have been just as a limitation of the suit that they had. I don't know how well it was.
I think part of it may have been a limitation of the suit.
The suit was probably very hard to move in, and that's fine, like, whatever. But then also, couldn't you just, like, redesign the suit? And maybe just choose a different...
Not if they didn't want to... Maybe after they designed the suit, they were just like, all right, we'll just go with this because...
Something interesting, though, about that, which I find, dude, I don't understand, and maybe I'm just being naive here. But when Bruce Wayne comes back, and he's in R&D, and he's talking to Lucius Fox, they're going through, like, oh, we got this thing that does this crazy shit. I got a little portable black hole maker. You can throw it at a wall. It just sucks the universe inside of it. I got anything that you want. What about this suit right here? Kevlar lined. Stops a knife. Doesn't stop a bullet. Anything but a straight shot. Tell me how someone who isn't wearing one of those things is punching Bruce Wayne, punching Batman, and he's like, oh! I would imagine that a punch, like, dude, if this thing can stop a knife, is a punch really going to, like, make him fall down to the ground? Like, if he's in a hand-to-hand combat in a fight with Ra's al Ghul?
Well, I mean, that's supposed to show that Raish is like an above top tier martial artist. But also, I'm pretty sure, like, and don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure, like, what stops a knife from going through fabric, like a Kevlar type suit, is like the threads in it do something to like sharp edges, like tiny sharp edges. But that wouldn't stop like impact.
But you don't think it would deafen and just like even the slightest bit, that it would be almost the same as getting hit if you weren't wearing it?
Well, I think if he wasn't wearing it, it may have actually like killed him.
One of Raish's punches?
Yeah. Like, I mean, you being you're like you built, but like take a normal sized dude and have like prime Mike Tyson just like punch as hard as he possibly could with nobody stopping him. Nobody being like, Mike, if you kill this dude, you got to go to jail.
And like, somebody told Mike Tyson, like, hey, man, all bets are off.
Just let go. And you telling me if he didn't punch hard enough, he may not kill that dude with the one punch.
I guess in the right spot.
Like, to put it bluntly, like, it's highly suspected that the reason that Harry Houdini died was because he let some dude punch him in the stomach, and it caused, like, a rupture of his, like, spleen or something.
Oh.
So... If you're going to, like, I would take saying, hey, this dude is supposed to be like above top tier. Like when it comes to fighters in the DC universe, he's supposed to be in like the top 10. He should be able to punch up like Batman in a way that hurts Batman no matter what Batman is wearing. If Batman can punch people that he shouldn't be able to punch, like a Solomon Grundy or even sometimes like Superman, in ways to like stop them for a second, then Race should be able to punch a Kevlar.
But isn't it like, if he does that, something like Superman, example, I mean, is it when he's weakened with kryptonite? Like, I can't imagine he could anywhere that Batman, if Superman has no kryptonite around him, and Batman goes to punch him in the throat, Like, it's not just because he punched him in the right spot. Oh, I still got you. It's like, dude, it's Superman.
You probably wouldn't like goozle him.
Did you say goozle?
Yeah, goozle when you get hit. That's the goozle.
is that a real word? Goozle?
Yeah.
How do you spell that? I feel like I need to look
It's
that up.
not guzzle. It's I've never thought to spell it.
Goozling?
Yeah.
Goozling.
Like GOOZLE.
It sounds like a word that might have like two U's, like goozle.
It may be two U's. I don't know. Yeah. And with the goozy pipe. But,
So yeah, but I mean, I guess all that to say, goozling. I'm sorry using that, man. Don't make me goozle you, bruh. But yeah, it's just one of those things where I guess it left me wanting more when it comes down to it. Like,
the whole movie series left me wanting more. But I also didn't realize at the time, and this is like going back to like that period, I didn't think you could get better because of what we had going into it.
Well, but here's the thing.
Then I learned like, oh no, we can do much better.
You think about some of the action sequences from superhero movies that you've seen up until that point. Because before Batman Begins, you would have had 2 Spider-Man movies. You had Blade. What else? I guess that's as far as, I would say Spawn, but I mean, you're speaking of Michael Jai White, but Spawn.
Yeah.
Wasn't.
Again, that's like making a Spawn movie with Michael Jai White and never having him do any martial arts and just use guns and CG. What I'm saying is that you have Daredevil, you have Elektra, you have
Daredevil.
Spider-Man's 1 and 2. You have X-Men 1 and
X-Men 1 and 2. Yeah.
You have Blades 1, 2, and I think
Blade 1, 2, and 3 come out before.
And what you see throughout all of these is very close to that same similar style of fight editing. There's no like, I will say Blade may come the closest to being the movie, like superhero movie in which you're like, okay, they're out here doing some damage. But for the most part, all of them were like, we are putting in these people who do not know how to fight as our main stars, even though we're going to put them in suits that can completely hide the fact that it isn't them. But we're also not really going to make like a well-known, like we're not going to get great fight choreography because it's a superhero movie. It's like taking panels for panels instead of thinking of it from the mindscape of what if I took the Raid and just slapped Gotham on top of it? Or like, what if I took Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon and instilled some Marvelness into it? Like, there's no thought process on how can I make this a great, knowing that you have a character that is prone to close quarters combat. Like, you don't have to worry about that with like X-Men or with Spider-Man to like an extent, because one, Spider-Man moves around too fast to even worry about trying to capture like a great fight scene with Spider-Man. And he's in a big, colorful, bombastic world where explosions and big set pieces work far better. With Batman, they just chose to stay safe instead of looking at it as, I have this person who's well known for close quarters combat. And I'm still thinking of it as this character who's well known for having a gadget belt that solves all of his problems.
With a utility belt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So having that, I'm going to and all these other gadgets like a Batwing and Batmobile and Batboat. And he's facing dudes also not known for, like, it's not like he gets in fucking world record 12-bound routes with the Joker. Like, if you're going to fight the Joker, it's more than likely going to be like a one-punch done type deal. Joker don't fight.
Right.
Poison Ivy don't fight. You either put him in, and all this to say that Nolan sidestepped every one of those things I said by saying, oh, I do know that Batman is a person that does close quarters combat. Let me try to show it to you right away, and then just kind of failing at it. And if he just... And then also, I'm not going to put him up against immediately a person who doesn't fight. Let's put him up against the dude who knows who trained him on how to fight. So all those things should say I should do a movie all about great close quarters combat. But this is also Warner Brothers. This isn't Miramax or New Line Cinema. This is a company that's going to pump a bunch of money into something that's going to be a summer blockbuster.
Yeah.
So it should probably be big set pieces, explosions, people in danger, all the things that says that, like, Batman is a superhero and not just the Iron Fist or someone like fighting low-level crime in a city.
Yeah.
The problem is it should have been that.
Yeah.
it should have, in my honest opinion, I would have still added Raish, but I would not have had him fight Raish. I would have taken Raish and added him like 2 movies on. Instead, I would, actually, before we go to that, because I do want to do that maybe just like a little bit later. To go back to the action scenes, it was just all about set pieces, and that was what the style was at that time. And for big movies, I will say. There are obviously tons of other movies that were still doing that during that period of time better. And it's a shame that he didn't think to like use those as some form of inspiration, but I can also understand why he didn't. 2005 me would not put that as a detriment to the movie, mostly because I also wasn't really thinking about. I don't think I was thinking about that type of thing in a Batman movie until the third movie.
Really?
For me, I think I was really just so happy that it was not Batman and Robin that I was like, I will take this. This works for me. And then it just got better, and then it didn't. Then it dropped off. But yeah. It works. It works when you look at it from 20 years on. Batman Begins works as a movie that introduces you to a Batman that ultimately will become a better Batman and ultimately will be better movies. And as a first time out for this particular director, not in movie making, but in making a Batman movie, it wasn't the best, but it far exceeded what had come before.
Yeah. Now I'll give it that. Like, I'm not saying that it's like an abysmal piece of shit at all. Far from it. It's just there were just things that I would have expected to have happened. Thoughts and sequences, takes on the character that I thought would have been injected into it. So you brought up Blade and some of the other movies. And my thing is like, was Blade... I think Wesley Snipes is even a martial artist, right? Like... I think to a degree, like, I'm pretty sure Wesley Snipes is a martial artist, but, like, was he fighting, is Stephen Dorff? No. But, like, just the first time that Blade is introduced in that movie, in the first Blade movie, fucking epic. That sequence is just nuts. He just goes, and it already sort of showed you, like, he's a legend, he's a myth amongst this seedy underground clove of vampires. And, like, I wasn't watching that sequence even as a kid, being like, I can't tell what's going on here. Like, you could see what was going on. And he was messing those people up. And so it's like, I don't understand, like, how you can, like, make a movie and then, like, not look back at some of those other superhero installments and think to yourselves, like, maybe I can learn something from that.
I mean, they probably don't. For some reason, it just feels like people have their inspirations and their influences, but they don't strive to actually go out and try to make I shouldn't say make a better product, but more so like once it feels like maybe when directors have their ideas set, that's it, and that they don't go to research to see what could make it different, because in their mind it's already there. And then sometimes they don't even worry about especially if it's a already established property. It seems sometimes they don't care about the previous iterations of it, and they would just rather, this is my pure take on it.
Yeah.
And honest to goodness, I think that actually harms the product, but I don't think they care because it's still their vision. Take the dudes making, but sometimes it does. Like take the dudes with The Last of Us. Like apparently a large swath of them didn't actually play the game. Oh. But we still got what we got.
Yeah.
Which was really fucking good. Apparently the dudes that are doing the new Harry Potters didn't read any of the books.
There's new Harry Potters coming out?
Yeah.
Oh. Why? Like, I'm sorry, is this a remake of the actual, like, the original series?
So I think it's supposed to be a HBO Max series that is starting over from scratch.
Oh, my God. Really?
Yeah.
Man, Hollywood really, they really just don't, they're running out of ideas, huh? They gotta redo Harry Potter? I guess Harry Potter just started, like, over 20 years ago now, but
almost 30 years ago at this point.
Wait, when did the book start?
Like in the mid-90s.
I remember reading the first book in like 99, 2000, so it was a while for me. But I remember the first movie came out in 2001, I think.
I think in this case, they probably are just trying to get away from Rowling by making like even though it is her property still.
I think it's the other way around. Like Rowling, her actors are, so anti-her because of all of her politics that she's trying to phase out, like, of the just like the three main actors, because Hermione Granger, Emma Watson, I forgot her name for a second, is so like for the people, and J.K. is definitely not for the people, so she's trying to have new faces for her IP.
That would make more sense.
I hope we caught your voice in there, Andrew, by the way.
I heard it. So.
Oh, okay, nice.
People are going to be like, where did this third voice come from?
Yeah.
An hour and a half into
entire time. Anyway, this is our boy. You didn't know we tricked you, motherfucker.
But, yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised if you were to ask Christopher Nolan, hey, man, what did you look at when you were deciding to make the Batman Begins? He'd probably name like 5 movies that had nothing to do with superheroes whatsoever. And you're like, you didn't think to look at like
Goodfellas,
like Spawn or like Blade or anything.
Yeah.
Blade's basically like Batman for vampires. You didn't think to look at it like, nah,
Batman for vampires.
I'm good. I like the people I like. This is who I decided to look at, and I think it's great when you can have multiple fresh eyes on a project.
Yeah.
But I also think that works best in something like a comic book or something where it doesn't take 2 years to make the product.
Yeah.
Like, because that's an experiment that you kind of hope pays off.
Right.
Otherwise, you just are stuck with a gem and a holograms type situation.
And you probably will be less likely to be more adventurous when it comes to taking certain chances on things, because you're right, like the amount of money. I know this is a conversation that happens a lot when, I guess we're doing it now, like when it comes to some of these, when we're talking about everything that goes into a movie, like why didn't you do this? Why was this your choice versus this? And you can go on forever. But I guess one thing that we do have to realize at the end of the day is that it is a business, and these people are out there to make money. Like they're trying to put people in that seat. And as much as we would like to see something that is like a very true depiction that is close to the material that we know and love, that we grew up with, like the people funneling all the money into this project that literally costs tens of millions, if not a couple $100 million. Like their concern is am I going to make that money back? So you're probably going to be less likely to make a choice that you think from focus groups that you've run in the past that are going to be of any sort of detriment to that bottom line.
So I can't harp on like the things that he missed, but seeing as we kind of said how we feel about it, what do you think if Christopher Nolan were to make Batman Begins today? What do you think he should have done differently that would make this one better than the last one, than the previous one?
I'm going to say, like, one of the things is if you're going to try to make the movie grounded, then hold conviction to that. Like, you want to make it grounded, then be cynical and be violent. Show the world how ugly the world really is. Rather than, and that's why I brought up the whole Broadway-esque sort of interpretation of it, is because I think of Broadway, I think of like, again, like the glitz. That's the thing I said grits before. Grits, I love me some grits. Like the glitz and glam. And there's always this sort of overt, sort of like shiny final product that you get. And so you can try to say, oh, this is grounded, but like, is it really? Boom, boom, one shot each, they're dead. Debris falls down on Ra's al Ghul that doesn't even look that heavy, dead. Falcone sends his regard, one shot, dead. Like, it doesn't really, to me, dive into, like, the depravity of man. For me to say, like, oh, this really grounded. Like, it's like you want it to be that, but you're also kind of afraid to truly throw yourself into that darkness. It's what it felt like to me.
Do you think that was what he was going for, though?
What,
like specifically the depravity of man?
I say that yes because, and I initially didn't feel this way, but like upon rewatching it, I'm like, you keep harping on how bad things have gotten in Gotham, but I never felt it. It never felt to me like things were that bad.
Do you think that it could be like paying lip service to the element as a way of exposition so that you don't have to show it, but more so in a way that says these things are bad because you know there is going to eventually be a character that's supposed to turn the tide. I don't have like a direct like movie analogy, but let's say there was a movie about like war, and at the beginning you see a couple of shots of like the war happening, and we're in the movie it's the war is happening, but it's more so they're constantly telling you like everything's happening instead like away from the war, maybe like in Washington or something, and like you're constantly getting updates that the war is bad. Our guys are getting pushed back. They only have so much time, and it keeps saying that and keeps saying that and keeps saying that because we know there's the rise of like another character, like say Captain America, and Captain America is going to get there and turn the tide. So they need to tell you how bad it is because ultimately there's going to be a character that's representative of stopping that like from happening.
Well, my thing is like ultimately if that character is meant to come face to face with the very thing that we're paying lip service to, the very thing we're talking about, that I need to see it. Mm-hmm. Like if he's supposed to combat that directly, like literally, and especially in the case of Batman, like with your fist, then I want to see it. I want to see him go head to head with that. Otherwise, it just kind of seems like he's combating some sort of, I don't know, like moral idea that's like floating out in the ether. Because I'm not seeing just how terrible it is for the regular Joe Schmo that's down on the street that has to be the one that's worried about getting mugged or screwed over by the police or any number of things. Because you're focusing on a set of characters, which is like any movie does, like, I get it. But if you're going to talk about it and he's going to combat that, then show me him combat that. And it can't be something, again, just like in my opinion, it can't be something where your example is, oh, this little boy who I think is like Joffrey from Game of Thrones was getting yelled at by his dad, so he decided to walk out on the balcony. Oh, like anytime we're showing just like how bad things are, it's just like a homeless person standing by a fire in a barrel by himself. Like not a group of homeless people, not a swath of them, just like one person. Like, oh, like it.
I mean, if it's only one. I mean, that's worse than multiple, right? I mean, he's by himself and he's homeless.
I mean, like, but the thing is, just like if city's getting so bad, like, okay, so the city, things got really bad for like one or two people, not everyone.
No, that'll really spread out.
So it's just one of those things that's very, I don't know, it's interesting to me, and it did make me wonder, is like, damn, like, you know, Christopher Nolan, have you ever been in a bad city? Like, have you ever been in like in a bad like neighborhood? Because it was just so funny to me that she just takes a left turn and is just like, you see what happens? Let me drive down this ramp. It's totally different. Like, okay, all right, but like, and the thing is ultimately Bruce Wayne is in his $1 billion mansion. Or he's in Wayne Tower, his $1 billion building that is the family owns. Like, I guess outside of when he went abroad, you don't really see him on the ground interacting with those people unless until like the very end of the movie. But even then, he's like, he goes there specifically somehow very quickly finds Rachel and saves Rachel. And other than that, he's interacting and battling the League of Shadows. He's not necessarily going around that city in that scene. You don't see him running around saving just like random people. Like he goes there with the intent of saving the one person he knows and fights another person that he knows with some other people that he may have known.
Okay. If I were to, if I were Christopher Nolan, and I were redoing it, I would take Scarecrow out.
Really?
My 3-part structure would be probably pretty vastly different. For me, the first movie should have been The Black Mask. It should have been The Black Mask with an emphasis on the Mafia War in Gotham, dealing with Sal Maroni and Carmine Falcone.
Okay.
With a Batman who is essentially coming back and now having to deal with that. But he doesn't even truly get to deal with it right away because he now has to deal with this third entity in the Black Mask, essentially wiping out the Maronis and the Falcones in a bid to take over the crime underworld. I would have had Cobblepot being in it as well. I think I would have had him essentially kind of being like an arms dealer who's supplying all three and would have been like one of the first people that Batman would have engaged to try to make it into like a informant, which Cobblepot would have gladly done so that Batman could wipe out the three so that he could take that place. I would have still had Ra's in there, but like I said, Ra's would have been essentially like just introduced as a person that trained Batman. There would have been seeds of him looking to do his eco-terrorist thing, which would have been dealt with in the third movie.
Yeah.
You needed, if you were going to go like the route that you said, like things are bad, then you got to show things are bad. And the only real way to show things are bad by showing an actual criminal element constantly around. And if you're like, because to some degree, my movie isn't too far away. Instead of like Black Mask, they use Scarecrow. Just he's to me is just one step too far into like the crazy superpowered people that Batman has to now start fighting on a constant basis. So I would have saved him for the next movie, and instead just really focused on Batman having to like fight essentially like close to what seems like a 3-sided war.
So if you would have had then Ra's al Ghul circle back and be maybe like your ultimate villain in the third movie, would you have changed what Ra's al Ghul's plan was? Because I would imagine like with Scarecrow, I guess he had relevancy because they used Ra's al Ghul and because they were using that flower, which was supposed to like you know that toxin that brought people's worst fears to light. That basically the Scarecrow toxin that he was using was a product of that flower. So if you would have waited and maybe pushed Scarecrow off to movie number 2, do you think there would be any issue of sort of some kind of like I guess for lack of a better word like redundancy there? Like second movie has Scarecrow.
Oh no, there would have been a change because Crane wouldn't have been anywhere involved in the League of Assassins, or like basically he would have effectively come up with. I think what I would have done. I don't even think I would have put Joker in the second movie. I think I actually would have done a movie with Scarecrow and Poison Ivy.
Oh.
Effectively, Scarecrow would have accidentally helped create Poison Ivy because basically him and Pamela would have been working together. And what would have helped him create his fear gas would have inadvertently given Pamela her control over plant life. And if essentially it would have been those two butting heads because he would continue to need the flowers to create his fear gas, but she doesn't. Like she's like, no. Like these are my plants. These plants don't deserve that. And then I think in the third movie, I would have not wanted it to be a trilogy. It would have been one more movie after the third movie, because I do think my third movie would have still been Bane and Ra's, but without the like Batman's trying to retire shtick. And I think I also would have probably have put Robin in the second movie so that when we got to Joker in the fourth movie, we've either gotten ourselves a new Robin and also added Nightwing, or just a seasoned Robin.
Yeah.
But my first movie would have been much more focused on the city and the crime.
Yeah, ground level sort of
because
activity.
That Batman, it's explored pretty much in the Batman, but it's not explored enough, really. That Batman that isn't dealing with like extraordinary things, that isn't dealing with an Arkham Asylum yet, and it's just kind of dealing with actual crime, that like the part that needs to be stopped before you stop the supervillains. Because if you don't, and you just let the supervillains run amok, that still leaves the underbelly for the Maronis, for the Falcones, to just do what they need to do.
Yeah.
Which is make Gotham not a safe place.
Yeah. And this is why we need to be hired to make movies. I think that, WB, if you're listening, Disney, any execs.
I don't need to make them, but I would be a great consultant.
Yeah. Yeah. Come holler at your boys. Come holler at Panharmonicon Studios. Let me show you something. Let me teach you a thing or two. No, I'm just kidding. I ain't gonna teach you. But it was a great conversation. I think it was, yeah.
Got any final words on
Final
Batman
words.
Begins?
Final words. Like ultimately, I know we just spent like an hour and a half, critiquing the film. Again, like I do watch it. It's still very entertaining. I think for where it sits, it's still a very fun and great film to watch. And excited to discuss the other installments and move on to The Dark Knight Rises, and then to sort of tackle the trilogy as a whole. And because I think one thing I've not done since the trilogy wrapped, which is kind of crazy to think that this again started almost 20 years ago now, is that I've never sat back and watched all three movies back to back, which would be like a significant amount of time, right? Like we're talking about maybe like 7 to 8 hours of movie watching. That would happen.
Two Zack Snyder cut Justice Leagues and back to back.
Yeah. Damn. That's Zack Snyder cut. So I've never really done that. And something I did notice though, like in coming back, and because I think it had been a while since I've actually seen Batman Begins, is that I did start to notice there were certain ideas and threads that were consistent across all three films, which I always like. Callbacks to the original, if you think about some of the story elements of The Dark Knight Rises, which is always kind of cool because it brings everything full circle. Like something I'm not really a fan of, and I see this happen more so with like TV shows and movies, especially movies of this nature that get to have their trilogy or beyond, is that it almost kind of seems like they just keep going for the sake of going. They don't know how they're going to end it, and in a lot of TV shows, especially when I think about DC CW TV shows, is they're making money, they got a good thing going, and they just don't want to stop. Like no one thinks about creating a solid beginning, middle, and end of their story, and so these things just go on forever and ever for 8 or 9 seasons, and you're just like, well, why? Did it really need that? Could you have ended this a long time ago? And I understand that with these comic books, they do keep going on and on and on and on, and characters die and they come back, and then they die again and they come back again, and or they change sides, or we have other multiverse interpretations of what this character is. But something about seeing that in live action, to me, doesn't always work. Now, there are special cases. I mean, how many times have we seen Hugh Jackman as Wolverine? And yet, I still can't get enough of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. Like, the dude's been in so many movies right now, and I'm like, yeah, give me another Hugh Jackman Wolverine. Like,
that's good casting.
That's amazing casting. I think I could probably say the same for, like, Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, and there are some of those folks where I could just see you play a character forever. So long as you can give me a story that is intriguing, or maybe some slight variance off of something you may have done before. But like I always get that fear of just going for the sake of going, and then you start to lose your themes, you start to lose your motifs, you start to lose sort of sight of what the point that you were trying to get across, And I think that Christopher Nolan did a great job of keeping that consistent, but I'm just saying that there are things that I would have liked to see done differently. I would have liked to have just seen, like kind of like a put your money where your mouth is, some sort of physical representation of the evil that these people are trying to combat. But it all just kind of seemed like they just wanted to dip their toe in the water rather than fully submerge themselves in it. And I think really The Dark Knight is maybe the best sort of visual that we get of that when you see Joker. Because that Joker interpretation was fucking phenomenal. Yeah.
All right.
Well, for the 3 people that are probably maybe going to listen to this, thank you for... No, I'm kidding. Hopefully it's more. Appreciate you guys listening. Still don't know how to necessarily like wrap this up in the proper way. Hopefully as we do more, we'll learn. But want to thank our boy Andrew Gonzalez for sitting here and getting all this set up. And being a great sport for listening on this for an hour and a half or so and getting all the equipment set up.
You guys also never introduced yourselves at the start.
We never introduced ourselves, so like, yeah. Well, my name is Pharin Willis. I don't know what people may want to know about me. Hopefully, I will get to know each other as we go along. Damon, if you want to...
Yeah, this is Damon, Chancellor. And this is also Panharmonicon Studios presents a podcast.
Oh, I thought I said that.
You did.
Okay.
I just wanted to wrap it up with it.
Well, see you next time.